dancing. Yeah.
In the time of my life.
So I have to go with that.
And I don't know the words to the song.
You're also looking at me very intensely.
Yeah, shall I lift you up in the air?
No.
We need to win this competition.
We did.
We must win this dance competition.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, guys. Thank you so much for listening in to the Forever DM. I am so excited to announce today's guests. We have the DMs from Dungeons and Drag Queens. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Hello.
Thank you for having us.
Why don't you guys tell us a little bit about your campaign?
Well, our project is called Dungeon Drag Queens, which is sort of self-explanatory. We are a group of 10 drag queens, and we perform Dungeon Dragon sessions live on stage in front of an audience. So that is the premise of what we do. We do authentic D&D sessions, but we don't play them around the table. We play them on a live theater stage with a gigantic D20.
Yeah, no tables, no whatsoever. The drag queen standing.
We focus more on, of course, the roleplay element of it, but we try to stay as close to the D&D format as possible, as we sort of see that D&D is a perfect vehicle and a system to really bring improvisation theater to the next level. For now, we've seen like a very good blend between the two, and it's for us entertaining to make, and I hope entertaining to watch.
Yeah, not only the drag scene, but very much queer culture is in that sense very close to the D&D experience. We kind of want to highlight that in a sense.
Definitely.
Yeah.
As someone who has seen the second show, it is definitely so fascinating to watch. Our whole Clash of Quests as a crew, we did like a watch party, and we all watched the second episode together, and we could not look away. It was so good. We were like, death saving throws already, the fire. It was so amazing to watch.
We're not holding back.
Yeah.
There's drama at every corner.
Definitely. This is also the point of our shows. So a normal D&D session, as all the listeners of course know, is almost between like 3 and 4 hours. If you're really prestigious, you go on longer than that. Yeah. But we try to keep the shows around 2.5 hours, which is of course ridiculous for a D&D session.
It makes no sense.
Especially when you want to be able to do anything. Like you cannot clear a dungeon within 2.5 hours. You can't almost do anything. So we have this high octane D&D sessions where we go through so much story in such a short amount of time. That is quite interesting, I think, what we're doing. Of course, there's always this debate between railroading and letting the players go free. And this is something that we are constantly struggling with also. What is the concept of railroading? And do players want to be railroaded? When do they want freedom? And how, as a DM, do you decide when do we give them freedom, or when do we give them the comfort of knowing what's going on?
Yeah, what we found mostly at first is that drag queens are very good at dealing with railroading DMs because they just break through absolutely. They're like, no, we're going to do this.
Yeah. The players, they can take over at any time.
At any time, and they do.
But remember, we're playing on a live stage in front of 100 people. And I think this is also everybody that records their own streaming. I mean, there are so many D&D streams out there. There is stage fright. So a player that is in our position in front of 100 people, they really want to know what's going on, or else they can't do their acting job. You know, they need a clear set scene. They need a clear description. They need a clear goal for the quest. And they need to be able in their minds to plan ahead. Like, oh, okay, so I need to save this baby or something. So there are probably going to be obstacles preventing me for that. But I know what the quest is going to lead to. Hence, I can role play towards that. So they need security, or else they're just going to fall apart on stage. Yeah. And part of our job is saying to the players on stage, looking them in the eye and saying, I got you, babe.
Yeah. Sometimes, it's a very different statement. Sometimes it's necessary to railroad your players.
Yeah, we believe so, because it's very much what kind of campaign you play also. If you're playing a very much an intrigue-heavy campaign, of course, then that's an entirely different story. But time-wise as well, because again, we're trying to play live shows that are 2.5 hours. But we're trying to tell a story that is very much hard world building, very much dramatic in the long run, and we're trying to make like a season of at least 10 episodes. So that all has to be coherent in a sense as well. We can't just let them go on stage and then see what happens.
I see a railroad a little bit. Let's say that an improvisation scene is a room. and there is an entrance door and there's an exit door. So in the scene, we give you the entrance. So, okay, this is going, like you enter on this forest path, and that is the entrance. And you know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So like so I'm giving you sort of the exit door of the room. In the room, I'm giving a lot of toys for you to play with. So the player then can decide like, okay, I know when this scene will end, because if I say to the DM, okay, I walk along the forest path and I go towards the light at the end of the forest, then I exit the scene and go into the next one. So that's the freedom that you give them. But you also give them the freedom to linger as long in the middle of that scene as they want. So I'm going to pick this up, I'm going to pick this up. And when the players then see that the audience is getting bored with the scene that's happening, then they say, okay, they can close off the scene themselves. So we set the real world in a sense that we design the room that they're in. We design the scene.
And their choices in those individual rooms can have a lot of impact on what happens later on in the story, as long as those rooms or locations within the story kind of stay the same. So we try to design episodes with these rooms in mind, so they're with scenes sort of. And as long as the end scene happens in the same location in the world, then a lot of things can happen. And we're prepared either way.
So to round this off, to summarize this, you need to show your players the light at the end of the tunnel, or else they're going to get freaked out and they're going to freeze on stage. So that is sort of the value of railroading for us.
It's such a unique spin on it to do it in a live theater. Would that be considered LARPing, live action role play?
Looking at the words, we do live action role playing.
Yeah. Well, I think mostly in the sense that there's no dipping, so there's no metagaming or jumping out of character, because they can't do that on stage. So there's a heavy focus on physical role play between each other, so players actually touch each other, run around each other, or have a mental breakdown on stage physically. And I think in that sense, it's quite close to LARPing.
Definitely, and this is something that you can try at home, because we heavily advocate, sometimes also with your players stepping away from the table, in players being comfortable with role play. So I think the first step is people saying, my character goes and opens the door and says to the chambermaid that they want a sandwich. And then the second step is saying like, hi, can you please bring me a sandwich? So like being in character while you're playing it. I think stepping away from the table and physically throwing your body into it, pretending to open the door and then looking at invisible said chambermaid. I think that is the next step, because using your body while you're talking and accentuating what you're doing with your full body, it makes the emotions so much more real. Yeah. And I think you're gonna get a level of immersion that can be a little bit scary.
And then the last step is you make the sandwich for yourself and actually giving me some silence for once. So I'm just kidding.
How dare you? How dare you? Getting in drag, that is the last threshold. Yeah. Listen up, you're getting in drag, that's the last step, do it.
You're hardcore until you're in drag.
Yeah.
Since y'all have 2 DMs, do you have to do more planning, or do you guys still do quite a bit of improv?
Yeah, well, there is too much planning. I think I still have the scripts here, our descriptions of our rooms, etc. So we
20 pages long, I checked today.
Yeah, the first one was 20. The first one was 20. The second one was 24.
Oh yeah.
Even. Yeah.
I get better each time.
Yeah, so we do quite a strange thing, of course, where we're two-headed GMing at the same time, which we really had to kind of develop with each other. I think that was the hardest part of setting this project up, was really trying to get into each other's energy zones in that, and also making that work, because there's a lot of pitfalls that you suddenly find if you're two-headed GMing.
Definitely.
But we do have kind of a dichotomy between what I do and what you do, in a sense, in that we were talking about this yesterday, of course, in that I'm much more of a hard world builder, and you're much more of a visual artist and a soft world builder.
Soft world for the win.
Yeah, there you go. So what often happens is that I write a lot of lore, etc., and I sit down as the only one on stage with the descriptions and everything written down and the music, so that I'm sure that it keeps flowing at least the whole time. And then you're on stage interacting with all the players and making sure that they're in the game, that they're engaged, and the audience as well.
Yeah. So I think that's a good way to put it. Of course, we bleed over into each other's territory.
Yeah.
But I, as a DM, am way more focusing and putting my energy into the emotional tension on stage. And I am a little bit less concerned with remembering the details, but I'm always sort of like observing the scene, like what's happening, where the emotions, do I as a DM need to cut it off because the audience is getting bored, so I'm watching the audience a lot. I'm feeling the energy of the scene, and then when I see like they're having too much banter that's going nowhere, I say, okay, now this is happening. So I sort of decide the pacing, and Marlijn is all the descriptions.
Yeah, and I try to make sure there's no plot holes and enough silly faces.
Yeah, Marlijn is so good. I really ask you to watch the episodes, not because we want to get famous, of course also that, but mostly for Marlijn's voices, because it is really one of the most incredible performances I've ever heard. And
oh, stop it.
No,
Thank
it's
you.
okay. Well,
We were commenting on it. We were listening. You switched to like this deep voice. It blew all of us away. It really surprised. Those voices that you did were incredible.
And we were watching it during our watch party last time, and then of course the officer voice came with Officer Gillen, and it was really deep, and we were like, oh my god, this is coming out of a drag queen on stage. Really great.
Yeah, but also with the facial movements that you do, you sort of put down this machoistic guy while you're wearing like a porn blonde wig and like eyebrows underneath your hairline. You know, it's like, but then you believe it, so you look sort of through the drag queen. And this is, I think we have a harder job because we look like drag queens. We're very clear depiction. I am unfortunately less talented, so when you see in episode 2 that I change my wig a lot, so I go from this one drag queen into the other female character, and I change the wig to really show the people that it's a different character, because I have to do that because we are drag queens. People can't unsee. Because when you're being DM'd to as a player, you look through the face of your actual DM and you imagine the character on top of it, right? So you imagine that barman, definitely. And for drag queens, it's a little bit harder because our faces are so, well, in your face. It's a little bit harder to project this fantasy character on top of what we're doing.
I'm gonna have to cut out how many times I say it's so well done and I love it so much.
No, keep it in.
How long have you each been DMing for?
I've been DMing for 6 years now, I think.
Yeah, me too, 6 or 7 years.
Out of that time, what was your favorite NPC you've ever created?
I think mine is still the mailbox.
Yeah, that needs a little bit of context.
So when we first started DM Drag, so we were doing our tryouts, etc., trying to find new cast. We established the story, and that most of the story played out in this old, decrepit mansion where the Lavorns live, which is a family of witches and outcasts, etc., which is still where our story takes place. And we had this idea that they had a lot of misenchanted furniture.
Yeah, it's like a thrift shop for magical items.
Yeah, that kind of went wrong. So it's like a bookcase that has a personality, and it's like, oh, I don't like this book, and then it spits it back out. And we had a tree-ant gardener, that kind of stuff. Well, it was crazy. But there was one which was very funny, which was Mailbox. I forget what his real name is. Yeah, Marcellus something. It was a mailbox. At the start of every session, we had a character go up to the mailbox and retrieve the letter. But the mailbox was so pompous because he thought he was a noble, and every time they try to get the letters, he would be like, oh yeah, a letter for a letter. And every single time the characters would have to write a poem to the mailbox.
Yeah, so they could get their own letters.
Yeah, exactly. But the voice was just ridiculous. I don't know why it was so funny, but I remember just our barbarian started hitting the mailbox at one point because the mailbox called her poem trash. And then he was like, help me seize this barbarian scum! Yeah. It's also really funny because, of course, we met through D&D as well. And all of my previous campaigns have been super serious. And then we started this and it was just like an acid trip.
Yeah, so that is, I think, the point that we're making a little bit about hard world building and soft world building. So for those who don't know the terms yet, like hard world building, you think more of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, Tolkien.
And soft world building would be more Ghibli, where with soft world building, it's more character focused. So the characters are driving the storyline. Yeah. So this is Harry Potter first 2 books. Whatever Harry Potter does, sort of the storyline adjusts to where Harry is at that point. Yeah. So that is soft world building, and it can be very effective.
Same with Studio Ghibli, where it's just visuals and barely anything is explained. But also Dark Souls in a sense, in that it's very, very intricate world. So it is in fact hard world building, but the story is only ever given to you in a soft world building way. where it's only very tiny snippets and you figure it out.
Yeah,
If
definitely.
there's even an
And I think the mailbox is a very good example of soft world building, because you can think like, why could the mailbox do this? Why could the mailbox do that? And we go like, yeah, go with it. Are you laughing? Okay, we're having fun.
Exactly.
That is more soft world building.
Do you prefer more homebrew or module?
Homebrew, absolutely.
Okay, I'm gonna stop you right there. I am a lazy bitch. This is a module queen. Module queen. I thoroughly enjoy myself with modules because I don't really like hard world building that much. And this is yeah, I hate it. I detest it. And I like just having the map of Faerun just in front of me, saying, okay, go from there, there, and there. If my players have a question, the module often has answered it. I can sprinkle my own NPCs as sort of seasoning on top of it. I can put in my own side quest where I think the story is too dry, and then my cake is done.
Yeah, for me, every single joy of DMing comes from the world building in a sense. I really love hard world building and building that lore and just looking at my world sheet and just seeing those 50,000 words.
That's crispy, warm world sheet.
Just seeing those 50,000 words on paper and just being like chef's kiss, like, oh.
And the moment their players wipe their asses with it.
Yeah.
That's...
No, but I'm a firm believer of a good combination between this hard world building and having enough faith in your world that you leave 99% of it out. The fact that you have that world, and I believe if you do that well as a creative writer, at least your players get a lot of faith in your world as well, and then they truly start to get autonomous within it because they believe it, but they also believe that they can find answers whenever they want to in whatever way.
No, I personally run a Harry Potter D&D campaign, and it's very funny, but it is example of where my soft world building falls through at points. Because everything is character driven, which is of course Harry Potter, because there are, what is it, like 400 students in a castle, and that is your setting. It's have like social sim, and it's have doing quests, but I do feel as a DM that sometimes I'm lacking in, if you got a straight answer, like, oh, what can we do in the castle, like blah, blah, blah for leisure time, and I didn't necessarily write out the whole castle. I sort of wrote out what you're sort of doing at the point, and then sort of 3 sessions. So I see your point where I fall through it sometimes because I didn't put the hard foundation underneath to be able to answer those tough questions about my world.
Yeah, and I feel like that is a nice way in which we work together on D&D Drag, in the sense that I try to make the world as much as I can, and I try to put it in your mind, and then I can just trust you to work with that with the players, and then I don't have to stress about that.
Yeah.
I do have to agree with her though. I like homebrew more.
I feel like that kind of trust in yourself as a DM is of course what we'll after as DMs as well. It can be quite stressful to DM, of course, but I just feel like, coming back to this, that having as a DM as much understanding of your lore of the world as you can helps you improvise so much better. So if I know exactly what this dungeon or this city is about, and I've written a lot about it, even though nothing is a description of the exact street or room you're going to be in, I can just make that up on the fly because I really understand the feeling and stuff of whatever place we're at.
Okay, but let me
interject.
Let me address the elephant in the room, which can be DM burnout.
Yes.
This is a very common thing. Whereas I would like to make the point that starting from pre-written, so not necessarily campaigns by Wizard of the Coast, but maybe for me it helps avoid spending too long on a campaign.
Yeah,
I can imagine that there are a lot of DMs that would love to do homebrew, but simply they have kids and a job, and they can't spend like 2 hours per day writing that. I think if you have the luxury, you should totally go for it if it gives you that energy. Because, like you say, that level of detail needs to be there in the end when the players are at your table. And how you get there, that's a little bit up to you. You can write it all yourself. But I don't think there's any shame in taking a sense of a shortcut.
No.
Doing that. I think,
I think it's more of how much, which is a personal thing, how much validation you get out of doing that for yourself. Because I do a lot, and taking specific things from modules and then putting in my role.
Sorry, this is a counter question to you, because you run a stream yourself. Do you feel this performance pressure to sort of compete with other D&D streams?
We don't really have to compete. So we spoke with one gentleman last week. He runs D&D out of Las Vegas. Their whole thing is about breaking the stigma behind marijuana. It's fantastic.
The high elves.
It's so great. We were just talking with him, and it doesn't have to be like Clash of Quests versus D&D versus Dungeons and Drag Queens. We all have this amazing hobby, and there's no reason we can't all, share tips with each other. I think that's kind of a big thing with D&D too, is you never stop learning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's always new things that you can improve on. I think it doesn't have to be us versus them. It can all just be like this whole community that can all come together and just build off of each other. It doesn't have to be like a competition.
Well, this might also be like a small segue into what we've experienced, because we have experienced some like a little bit unfortunate encounters, of course, playing D&D and drag. And of course, some people feel like you're sort of invading their community. And for us, that's especially hurtful, because we're being accused of invading a community that we thought we were a part of for a long time, sort of like, who invading? Another thought comes to mind where you're sort of like, okay, maybe they know that we've been in their community and they disregard the fact they just don't want us to become popular, or they don't want us to become more visible than we already are. They don't mind us being in their community, but we just can't become more visible.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Just for a little bit of context, because of course we're still starting out with building the community, because we've set up this project for a long time, and now we're just starting to go out with it. But already there's been like quite a lot of instances where we're sharing groups, for example, and people are really accusing us of this stuff. We've been banned on Twitch already for really weird, inappropriate attire.
Yeah.
There's been multiple instances, and it kind of builds up over time, and it's especially weird because most of the drag queens that play in our cast have played D&D for quite a while.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the main things that we feel is so vital about this project, is the fact that queer people are such a big group in tabletop RPG communities.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times when I ask a person who's queer, like, do you play D&D? And they're like, I'm gay, of course I play D&D. Like, that's the standard answer. There's so many lesbian people I know, bisexual people I know, gay people I know, trans people that I know that play D&D, because it's creating a fantasy in a sense. And I think that resonates so much with queer experience. But still, to notice that there's still such a gap between where we are now and between, like, broadly recognizing that queer people are such a large part of tabletop role-playing RPG cultures is a large way to go, I think.
But I think what you're doing with this podcast is already, this is extremely powerful what you're doing, because you're giving a platform to these different voices, to these different DMs with these different experiences, with these different play styles. And just by doing that, you're already like breaking the notion, right, of what is good D&D and what the hell is good DMing. Who knows? Like, where do we want to go as a community? And I think this conversation is so important, because I think there are still groups that think that they have ownership over the answer. Where does D&D go to? They feel they're more legitimized to answer that question than other people.
Or at least here in the Netherlands.
Yeah. We can, of course, only end once again to say, for every hater, there are 100 lovers. So this is, in a sense, nitpicking, but...
Yeah, but the point is that these voices are vocal, in a sense, and they're a reasonable part.
Yeah,
so
they're people that speak up.
Yeah, we at least notice this a lot in the Netherlands, so I can't speak, of course, how this is for you. We notice a lot in TTRPG culture here. There's a lot of munchkin-y play, which is very much exclusive of queer people, at least, which kind of dominates a lot of the D&D spaces, I feel. And a lot of the queer D&D goes on always behind closed doors. So more of the shop play, I never really meet queer people, except you.
And I think that it's also not just for... So I went through, last year I was diagnosed with PTSD, and I used D&D to really help me get through that, because it was easier for me to use another character to kind of work through those emotions. So I could work through a different character working those emotions easier than it was for me to work through having those emotions. I'm still currently playing those characters, so I'm still working through it. But it's also, D&D can help not only just find your own identity, but it helps with mental health and social anxiety and all these other different things that I think D&D as a whole makes people better, more understanding people.
Definitely. I think that is a perfect point that you're making. It enhances social awareness, so much.
You have to place yourself in others' positions. You have to learn that in a sense. And I think that's very close to critical thinking as well, not only about yourselves introspectively, but also about other people.
Yeah. And let's go to like D&Ding with children. And there's so much powerful messages with it. I think the core of building a good party, also for adults. Let's say you're a character in D&D. Try as an exercise for the whole party. If you want to solve something, don't do it yourself. Ask somebody else to solve it. Because if everybody does this behavior, then you're going to get a turn when somebody asks you, hey, you're good at sneaking, right? Do you want to maybe climb up on this roof and open the window? Instead of saying, okay, there's the window, it's closed, and then saying, my character goes up to the roof and then opens the window. No, you let somebody else say, like, oh, I'm going to do that. Oh, can't you do that? And then you have instant character dynamic. You have instant good party dynamic. There's role play.
Yeah.
Take that maybe as an exercise for one session. Only ask other people to do stuff, and then people will return the favor.
Always,
and now imagine telling this to children. So saying for children at the table, saying, okay, we're going to play a little game. We're going to solve a lot of puzzles, but you can never solve anything yourself. You can only ask other people, can you maybe do this? Or what is your specialty? Or what do you think you're good at? That is such a good life lesson, right? I mean, like training children to ask others, what are their specialties? What would you like to do? And then trusting that they'll do the same for you.
Yeah.
Man.
So how do you feel about having a session 0?
Yeah. Let me say this. I think that is a mistake on perhaps our part. I think there needs to be a good conversation about party dynamics, because it sort of came into play that I think I played the first session, and then this is often what happens when you don't do a session 0 where everybody makes their character, and don't come to session 0 with your character already made, because you need to have a conversation about personality types.
Yeah.
We call them glue and
escalators.
So you have escalators and you have glue in the party. Try to sort of have that evenly matched.
As very basic archetypes.
Yeah, people that are going to define the nature of the scene, saying like, oh, I'm going to go into this shop and going to mess some stuff up. So that's the premise of your scene. And then you have glue characters, which will make sure that the scene doesn't escalate beyond repair. If you have 3 escalators in your party and 1 glue member, then that person is never going to be able to sort of pull the party back into this manageable scene that is fun. Yeah. Because if a scene goes too out of control, the game will break and it's not fun anymore.
And also, if you have only gluers, there's no fun in that.
Yeah.
Because there's nobody pushing the story forward.
And it's also, I think, putting a little bit of an unrespectful amount of strain on the DM. Because you're basically saying, oh, you know, I'm just going to do whatever I want. DM, solve it for me. Because nobody wants the party to die in the 4th session. And the DM also doesn't want that. And there's this sort of contract like, okay, it would be too soon if we die now. So you say to the DM, yeah, like, fix it because I'm just going to play my character.
Yeah, this is what my character would
do.
No,
so I do want to apologize to you. Sorry about
No, it was
sorry about okay, but yeah.
Yeah, but this I do think is interesting about our campaign. I hope we get a lot into that in the next session. So we haven't really gone to showcase it yet because we've only done 2 episodes, of course. Is the fact that, of course, our players have built their own characters, but, and that's I think what you wanted to say earlier, the thing that we did communicate with them from the start is that what archetypes they are playing, because we wanted a specific number of gluers and escalators. So for example, in episode 1, we have Jessica, which is the young and naive protagonist-like girl.
Escalator.
Absolute escalator. Absolute chaos incarnate.
Yeah. There we go.
Then you have Maru, which is very conservative, intelligent, and trying to kind of restrain or teach Jessica in a sense. Gluer, absolutely. Then you have Reddy, which is also chaotic. So not like Maru at all, but also trying to teach Jessica, the young, naive protagonist, in a different way.
Yeah.
It is also glue, in a sense. Yeah. And then we have the 4th character, which you can give form to in any way that you want.
We build, and this is, I think, in character building or in party building called the character diamond. So you make 4 characters and you put them in a diamond shape. And you draw relationship lines between them. And 4 is such a magic number within a party, because in a dynamic of 4, you got just enough to make this interesting party dynamic where if you take away one of the party members, the whole group falls apart.
Yeah.
So, and this is fun for scenes, because then these 4 personalities, they constantly rely on each other to make a scene work. I think that is really interesting. So when you make your party, make your character necessary for the party dynamic. So make a party dynamic where everybody has this integral role in building scenes. So somebody knows like, okay, I'm always gonna antagonize shit. It's fine, it's completely fine. But then one character also says like, okay, I'm gonna stop you. And then it's just a verbal contract between the two. If I say stop in character, your character is going to listen to me. Otherwise, this relationship in the party is not going to work. Yeah. So allow yourself as an escalator to be pulled back by the glue. Otherwise, you're not creating a good game.
Yeah, or not a fun scene at
least. Yeah, not a fun
people.
Scene. Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just being unstoppable.
Yeah. Allow yourself to be pulled back. And I think this is a very good message for young players because they often have the counter argument. Like, yeah, but I just want to play my character. And then it's not like a total open sandbox game if I can't do what I want to. Yeah, but we're also playing a social game, and
we're doing cooperative storytelling.
Yeah, we do quality cooperative storytelling.
Yeah. D&D solved.
D&D solved.
Do you feel like you've gotten to use DMing in real life? Like, for example, we interviewed a DM who used their quote unquote DM skills to get a raise from their boss.
Oh,
that's interesting. I have learned a lot about sailboats. Don't think I'm going to use that in real life.
You are good with technical boat terminology. I have to give you that. Yeah.
I myself study applied ethics and political philosophy, so in that sense, maybe that's why I like hardcore building so much. But I really get the feeling that my understanding or grasp on how, for example, political systems work or how just people see, groups of people see each other has been enhanced by D&D, by the aspect of playing it out. Because you can read so much theory about political philosophy or political theory, whatever. But when you're playing it out as a person that you never ever put yourself in the shoes of, then suddenly you get much better insight into that. And I feel like that has, D&D has generally enhanced my view of how other groups work or see the world in a sense.
Definitely.
Even though that's a very broad answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I've also learned a lot about sailboats.
Geopolitics and sailboats.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's quite interesting also to use. Of course, there are a lot of philosophical problems that we write in D&D, and it's interesting to see with a party, okay, a danger of sounding like a basic bitch. I think a lot of parties find a very utilitarian approach to this, and then they say like, yeah, we did it for the greater good of the people, and Allah.
Utilitarian meaning you try to maximize happiness and try to, so it's very calculated.
Yeah. Which is, in my understanding of basic philosophy, it's a little bit philosophy 101. Sort of the trolley thing, and then you say like, oh, I did the moral thing, but it can go so much deeper than that. So I think you, especially like having studied ethics, that's super interesting that we sort of underestimate. I think that as D&D community, we could go so much deeper in these thought experiments that we introduce.
I think we do subconsciously, because I think a good example of this is the paladin archetype, right? The paladin archetype is, when speaking about philosophical ethics, 100% Kantian. Which means that you have these certain moral rules which are universal and they can't be argued. And that's kind of what the paladin says always.
Yeah,
with
they have oaths.
They have oaths, yeah. So they're, ethically speaking, academically, they're Kantians in the sense that you say, no, there's no calculating whether this is moral, you're just wrong. Whether as a chaotic neutral
there is
character.
A difference though in the fact that these are not sort of morals, these are actions and consequences. If the paladin doesn't really do that, they're gonna literally like lose their ability to zap someone.
But still, I mean, you have and that's what I find one of the things that's most interesting about D&D 5th edition is how they did the alignment system in a sense, or D&D in essence, is that you have a party with vastly differing moral systems.
Yeah.
So your alignment from lawful neutral differs so vastly from lawful good, in a sense, much more than your or mine alignment in real life would.
And
so you're putting yourself in this.
Yeah, because I think one of the biggest conversations about the alignment system is like, what is good, what is evil, what is neutral, and then I think most people have come to the consensus like good is doing actions, wanting them to benefit other people, and then evil is doing actions that you want to benefit yourself, knowing that they will hurt other people. I think that is sort of what we've come down to as a D&D community, right? In the alignment system, if we want to play our characters.
Yeah, maybe that differs vastly from from other groups, but mostly what I'm trying to say is that I find it so interesting in that as tabletop RPGs, we put ourselves in these situations where we morally differ. Our characters morally differ much more than we would in real life.
Yeah.
And that impulse that we do it is interesting, I think, because we're learning something from that. I think that's the empathetic part.
Yeah.
Because that's super human.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Sorry, we got way too philosophical.
No.
You have such a connection to your D&D party, and it's online and it's not built on national identity, and it transcends national identity.
That's really what we're hoping to push as well, is because we are all so different and everything. I don't know if it's necessarily the same thing in other parts of the world, but especially here in America right now, everything, it's so us versus them. Again, going back to that same thing, it's us versus them, and that's not how it should be. So that's really what we want to use that platform to explain through storytelling. And we're getting rid of a lot of traditional D&D stats as well. So we don't do racial bonuses. You get 4 points that you can put wherever you want, because to say that every drow is evil or every tiefling is charismatic, it's very exclusive. So we're trying to get rid of a lot of that, and we're hoping to use what we can.
And of course, and I think it's the most sensible thing to do, because of course you can say, because of their physiology, you can say like drows can see in the dark, or they're more limber, whatever. But then you leave it up to the players whether they want to integrate that into their character. So you can give it as a backstory, of course, like the race is generally more this. But then in this fantasy game, you leave it up to the player to actually decide, okay, do I want to build my character around this racial background? If not, leave it up. So it's an excellent point that you're making. Like, I think your character doing that is such a great introduction.
Yeah.
I do think it's interesting. Every DM that we've talked to that has really enjoyed the hard world building has brought up Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Okay, that's good hard world building. Oh, yeah.
It's amazing. It is so good.
Yeah, but the storytelling is very well done, soft world.
It is.
You start from the waterbenders, the Northern Tribes.
Yeah, but that's not soft world building. It's hard world building where you just leave stuff out.
Yeah, it's hard world building, but then storyline. Well,
they just don't tell it.
In the intro, they sort of do the hard world building where they say like this land, this land, this land, this land.
Have you seen Korra?
I am currently watching Korra.
Yeah, same. I found it really interesting that they just skipped the entire intro in Korra. In Korra, it's just like literally the intro of Korra is like 2 sentences.
Oh yeah.
And the first one is like, here's the entire lore of the
That's after Last Airbender. Yeah. And everything. Oh no. We have to admit this. If you watch Dungeons and Drag Queens, there's this very apparent thing, and we have an animated map where everything sort of animates itself, and we show the lands. We literally took.
You did.
I literally took the script of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and we put in our own narrative, just line-wise.
But it's just so concise.
Yeah, it is so, just verbally, it's the perfect way to explain your world. This part of the world, this part of the world, this part of the world, this part of the world.
First was this, then this happened.
Yeah, and then this historical event happened and fucked everything up.
Yeah. Here we
after the historical event, the world this. And our players begin here. Yeah. I mean, like, that is the intro of Love After The Last Airbender, and it is perfect. Why would you ever change that?
Yeah. And they did great with that. It's just a very good narrative tool, and I think...
Thank you, Avatar, for letting us borrow it and...
steal your shit!
Yeah,
also, that's what good DMs do. They take from other things, I'm gonna say steal from other DMs, but you take their things, like, man, you do really good at this, I'm gonna use it, I'm gonna implement it. And that's, again, goes back to the whole, it's not us versus them, it's just everybody building and getting better together. If you find inspiration from Avatar, take it. If you find inspiration from Harry Potter, take it.
It's cooperative storytelling, right?
We have a few last questions, and this one's less about D&D and more about y'all as people. And we like to not give you any warning. If you could each recommend a movie, a book, and a TV series.
I have to admit, I watch a lot of trash.
You do.
I am going into the depths of my mind to find something that is of quality and shareable.
Movie. Interstellar. I hate to pick a AAA film, but oh my god, that film makes me cry every time. And it's such good storytelling in the sense that it's you start with our world that's recognizable, and then you start with these immense topics, but you only tell like emotional. Like Interstellar is about time travel and spacecraft and finding a new world for people to live on. But what the film is most about is this father-daughter relationship and what it's like to be a parent, right? So I love that minimalism in film things. Series, The Nick, which is
that's you.
Knick, which is from the Knickerbocker, which is a TV series about 1900s New York. Very grim, about the medical forefront suddenly being able to do academic autopsy, and then like every single medical thing being invented at the same time.
And a shit ton of cocaine.
And a shit ton of cocaine, and a shit ton of racism and sexism. It's great. Oh my god, best series ever.
Not racism and sexism, let's clarify.
No, it's not. That's not great.
No.
The series is great.
The story around that is great. I'll start with my film, because I know that one. I'm gonna pick Lars and the Real Girl.
Oh.
I don't know if you've seen that from Ryan Gosling. He plays Lars, I think it's hinted at heavily autistic boy living in East Bumblefuck somewhere. And everybody's sort of worried around him, but there's this sort of big church community and everybody's looking out for him, and he's Lars, he's the guy, he's well loved. One day he announces, and he says, he lives next to his brother and his wife. He says, I'm bringing my girlfriend to dinner. And they say, oh?
You have a girl?
Oh, that's so lovely. Oh, Lars. Oh, yeah. And then they say to each other, yeah, well, he's going to turn out all right. I'm so happy that he has somebody to care for him. And then he brings a mail-ordered sex doll to the table. And he says, this is Bianca. Everybody's like, oh, what is this? And then he is in this sort of delusion that is his actual girlfriend, because for him to function within that church society and to be complete as an adult, he needed to have a sort of a wife, but he could never make that connection. So he imagined Bianca as this surrogate girlfriend, and this is a delusion so severe. And then people say, oh, but there's really something wrong with him. And it starts as this comical premise, but then slowly, I'm not going to spoil the ending, but the church community slowly starts to adopt this sex doll to keep this fantasy alive. So they say like, okay, Lars being happy is more important than this woman being real or not.
Than me spoon feeding Bianca the sex doll.
Yeah, no, this is, okay, so look at that, it is about collective fantasy, and it doesn't really matter whether something is real or not, it matters what it means to that person. Lately also, we've been talking a lot about things, whether they're real, and whether experiences of other people are real, and not to compare that to Lars sex doll, but I think this whole conversation about trying to pinpoint whether somebody's experience is legit or not, it doesn't matter at all. The fact that somebody is okay, well, it's turning into a horrible comparison, but I do want to say this on a meta, the point of the movie is that fantasies or things that we say or experiences are more important than physical materialism or matter,
and it's just also a good movie.
I think it's, I don't know, it's maybe my savior complex, but I think it's Ryan Gosling's most attractive film.
Look, you started with Ryan Gosling, and I was like, okay, I'll watch it. And then you give this amazing plot, and I'm like, well, now I have to watch it today.
Yeah, you have to watch it today. Yeah, the soundtrack is amazing. It's
Last question: Dirty Dancing or Footloose?
I've only seen Dirty Dancing. I'm a horrible gay, I know.
That's okay. I knew going into this might be a long shot since you guys live in the Netherlands.
No, we consume a lot of American television.
I must say Footloose, I have heard of, never seen.
Have you seen Dirty Dancing?
I have seen Dirty Dancing, yeah.
In the time of mother.
So I have to go with that.
And I don't know the words to this song.
You're also looking at me very intensely.
Yeah, shall I lift you up in the air?
No.
We need to win this competition.
We did.
We must win this dance competition.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Y'all are amazing. Where can everybody find more of you at?
You can type in Dungeons and Drag Queens on YouTube. We will most likely pop up.
Voice Dungeon Drag Queens NL.
Yeah, Dungeons and Drag Queens NL. You can also find us under that. On Instagram at Dungeons and Drag Queens Net, N-E-D for Netherlands. We do have a Patreon page, D&DQ NL on Patreon. Please support us. We really need it. We are poor. We're very poor.
And we're also on Facebook, also Dungeons and Drag Queens NL.
Yeah.
So if you post in that wherever you go, you'll find us anyway.
Yeah, and approach us and talk to us. We respond to almost everything because we have nothing else to do. So, which I'm unemployed. I can respond to whatever I want. I'm responsible to all your emails, slide into my DMs. I don't care.
Don't forget, you can watch Clash of Quests live every Saturday at twitch.tv/Clash of Quests at 1800 CST, 000 BST, and 100 CEST. Thank you guys so much. And don't forget, Nat 1s are just as fun as Nat 20s.